Hello, I'm Chris Flisher, and welcome to Turning of the Wheel, an intelligent, lively discussion about astrology, art, and spiritual adventure. Timing is everything, and as the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed. Join me as I explore concepts that allow us to broaden our view of the world. You'll hear interesting topics, meet fascinating guests, and discover who you really are. Using the time-tested practices of astrology, you'll learn how to accept change as the great wheel of life turns. Astrology, art, and spiritual adventure on Turning of the Wheel TV with Chris Flisher. Welcome to Turning of the Wheel. My name is Chris Flisher, and we are on a gigantic orb spinning through space, as we all know, and you know that I love to talk about astrology, which is a snapshot of what time is all about, because it's based on the birthplace, date, and time. But we're going to be talking about time in a different way. I've got an interesting guest on. His name is Michael Galileo, named after the famous Italian physician, philosopher, and mathematician, And we're going to be talking about the idea of time as it exists in our daily lives. And we were on a few weeks ago, and the time has flown. No pun intended, or actually pun is intended. But it's great to have you back again, Michael. Thanks for coming on again.
Right, thanks.
And we're going to continue our discussion about time. And time for me is, you know, there's so many phrases and metaphors, and we all are faced with it. We haven't got time. Where did the time go? Who knows where the time goes? All those sort of cliches, because we're all sort of plagued with the same sort of concept of time. And I think that your purpose is sort of to let us help us look at time a little bit differently. And I'm curious as to how that would be. I mean, it's such a difficult concept for some people to get their heads around, I think, because we just assume that it's there. We just assume that time is going to be moving on, and it is. But really what you mentioned, and I think on our last show, was that time is really a measurement of speed, and it's the rate of the planet Earth traveling through the universe, right?
Yeah, speed and distance.
Speed and distance are what time are, because when something is moving, and if the Earth ever stopped, would we have time?
No, because the reason the Earth would stop would be that the power source that is causing each moment to become the next has gone out. And when the power source goes out, you get to singularity again.
But time would still, if the Earth stood still,
everything else would have to stand still.
But time would still go on, wouldn't time still be?
No, because that time in and of itself is only exists when there's motion. Without motion, you won't have time. In the last time I was here, I think we talked about the concept of separating time from the actual motion and the dynamic that causes the motion that we then track. Again, we talked about this last time too. Time started by tracking moon phases,
right.
But then after moon phases, around 4,322 BC, the Egyptians noticed that the same star, Sirius, appeared in the same spot in the sky every 365 days. So instead of moon phases, we now move to years. So we could track that time. And so we've created a system of time which we apply to everything: how old the universe is, how old we are, how long we've been married, how long
all computers run on time.
Right, everything is all based upon time, based upon a year. Now computers use a system called universal coordinated time, or atomic time. And what that is, where we used to base time on the amount of time it took for the Earth to go around the sun, what they do, that's not accurate enough for computers, because there is a little bit of wobble, there are differentials that have to be accounted for. So they found a more accurate representation of the repetition of an event by tracking the 18th electron in a cesium atom. And it vibrates something like, I don't know, 9 billion and 19 billion times every second. And they track how many beats of that to create the second now, because those accuracies are required. Remember,
you have to have synchronization. Everything has to be synchronized.
And the smaller you get, what we're doing with computers now is we're creating a world within the atom.
Right.
Prior to this, we were constructing the world out, so we were using atoms to build the world. Now what we're doing, because of the accuracies in the technology, we go down inside the atom and change things before they even get here.
So it's a world within a world, is
Right.
essentially what it is.
It's a second virtual reality. This reality that you and I are in is the first virtual reality. Before this, it was trees, but nothing about this is natural. Everything here is man-made, constructed, and we're metabolizing the vibrations from all of that. We created this world that we now live in, separated ourselves from the natural world. We can no longer live out in nature, but that's where we came from. If you lived out in nature for a week, you'd probably be dead. You'd be like a shrinky-dink. You wouldn't know how to exist, because you've become an artificial being by metabolizing artificial ingredients, whether it's from the environment or the food that we eat. So we've evolved, we've changed in every moment by what we've ingested, what we've taken in. We've changed the way we are and to adapt to the world around us. So we're no longer the natural people.
Right, so all things have a beginning and an end, and all things must pass, regardless of what that may be, whether it's a tree, a duck, a dog, or us. You know, our organs, they eventually fail. This is through wear and tear and the gradual progression of time, correct? I mean, this is what causes things to deteriorate and come to their end.
Well, you could say it's gravity, too. Because in some cases it is the gravity that's pulling down, and that's been wearing on us. So again, to apply any responsibility for anything to time is erroneous, because time doesn't exist. How can you blame something that's not real? But what's actually happening is the universe is delivering the results of choices moment by moment. As ye sow, shall ye reap. It's electromagnetic. Remember on the last show we talked about the two wires being connected to the battery to the electromagnet. As long as that power source is on, everything is lining up and it's alive. And it's going to adjust depending upon the circumstances.
So that electromagnetic power is an inherent in our universe.
Yes, the original power source for causing things to evolve since the Big Bang is the cosmic microwave background. That's the leftover power and radiation from that original source. And then once that ball got rolling from that electrical current coming on, after about 3 billion years, the quasars kicked on. They evolved into being because of the nature of the elements and the electrical current and evolution. So quasars came on. Now quasars are power sources, and a quasar is equivalent to like 10 trillion suns. So that's when most of the matter in the universe was formed, because the power from these was just so gigantic that it caused everything to attract and repel. And we got most of space as we know it today because of that. Today, in our solar system, it's the sun that creates the power source. And then within you and I, it's our heart that creates an electrical current. So everything that's existing is existing only because the electrical current is causing it to be able to exist. That's what makes it holographically exist. You, me, reality. If the power source goes out, the yin-yang symbol goes from black and white to gray. But as soon as the power comes on, it ionizes, it polarizes, and it attracts and repels. And that's what causes each moment to be the next. We experience that as time, gravity, and karma, because each moment's becoming the next. And now that we have the ability to choose, since we've mutated and grown a human brain and we now have this power of choice, the choices we make directly affect the outcome of the world around us.
So that's interesting. The choices we make directly influence the outcome of the world. I understand that. And yet you would think that as a species, we would have made different decisions, because we do have empirical data. Why do we continue to make erroneous decisions?
Force of habit makes these. You wouldn't believe how many weathermen there are on television that every day not only use the word sunrise and sunset, which are illusionary enough. Buckminster Fuller had suggestions for sun sight and sun clips, because he too saw that people seeing things in the opposite direction was not serving mankind very well. And it's the truth that sets you free. So seeing how reality actually occurs is paramount. I filed a complaint many years ago with the Federal Communications Commission because, according to the Communications Act of 1936, I believe, it's illegal to knowingly broadcast false information. Yet, every day I watch weathermen say, the sun's going to come up today, the sun's going to go down tonight, and they do that over and over again. It's like brainwashing. So much of what we have wrong is built into the fabric of what we believe right. The clocks that actually go in the wrong direction, we forced to look at in school for 12 years, second by second, waiting for the end of the class. They're all going in the opposite direction. Twice, they just hypnotize us, mesmerize us to pay our taxes on time. That's what it's for, to keep everybody under control. And but
Well, I think that that's probably necessary when you have a large body of people on a planet and we have to have some sort of synchronized methodology that makes us all step in the same fold.
But how about one like I created here that basically shows the same thing but shows how it's really happening? This takes people from the maze that we're in and lifts you up. If you were to go on the internet and look up something called the Powers of 10, it's a video that takes you from one edge of the universe to the other, from the smallest at Planck's length, 10 to the negative 35th, all the way to Big Bang at 10 to the positive 24th. And if you do that, you'll see the various steps from where we are. We're at 10 to the 0 power, reality. So we're in the middle, but it goes out and then it goes inside the atom. And it's identical out there and inside the atom when you see it.
Yeah, the microcosm is a reflective of the macrocosm.
So what this does is this takes us from 10 to the 0 and raises us up to like 10 to the positive third. It gives us a bigger picture of what's actually going on. Not only can you see what time it is here, but you can see what time it is anywhere in the northern hemisphere, just with a single glance.
So in your own, knowing all that you know and all that you've discovered, how do you approach your days when it comes to time? In other words, you have to make the ferry on time, you have to get to the airport on time, you have to get on an airplane. And that brings up another interesting question. When we are traveling faster than the speed of the Earth, are we ever in an airplane?
You'd have to go 11. Well, the Earth is turning on a daily basis at 1,100 miles an hour. That's how come each time zone is 1,100 miles wide. There's 25,000 miles around the circumference. At the center of each time zone, they're about 1,100 miles wide. That's how fast the Earth is turning. It's going around the sun at a different rate, but that's the one that's 18.5 miles a second because we base everything on years. So the second is part of a year, it's not part of a day, if you can conceive of that.
Okay.
What you would do is if you were to go in the opposite direction that the Earth is turning at faster than 1,100 miles an hour, you wouldn't have anything to do with time because, again, the time is about the Earth going around the sun. But what you would do is you'd lose the sun in your rearview mirror.
Right. You know, there's that interesting, I read somewhere years ago about Einstein was in a car. He was driving in a car, and there was a fly in the car, and the fly was flying around in the inside of the car, and yet that car was moving forward. And of course, it made him think of, is the fly moving? Which direction is the fly going? Is the fly going as far as time is concerned? Using time as a relative perspective, which direction was that fly going? Or if you're walking you're on a train and you're walking backwards on the train or walking forwards, are you going faster than time itself? Or even those conveyor belts you see in the airports. I mean, they sort of change your whole perspective of time because you're saving time while you're on that conveyor belt.
No, it doesn't change my perspective of time. And the way I deal with it is better than most because I know every second's 18.5 miles long and it's not going faster or slower. And that's the beauty of understanding this as well because, you know, sometimes people say, boy, time went so fast, so time goes so slow.
That's our perception.
Right, but that's what it is. Now, if you understand that it's a constant at 18.5 miles a second, what that's telling you is check your perception. If your perception can't even keep a handle on time, what else can it keep a handle on? So it really comes down to our minds are out of control. That's why we make the choices that create the problems of the world, not because of the nature of the world. The nature of the world is just doing what we're telling it to do by virtue of our choices. As ye sow, so shall you reap.
Well, you know, that idea of making choices is something that sort of I am stuck on only because of the fact that obviously we are well-intended beings, I believe, at our core. We have our best intentions, and yet we seem to go awry so many times. I understand that other emotions enter into it, greed and all the other various permutations of the human ego are involved in that. But, you know, if we knew all that knowledge, why wouldn't we make fewer mistakes?
Because we don't know all that knowledge. If we're making the mistakes, then they're showing us how little we know. But our egos get in the way of that, and we look for excuses, we look for reasons. And really, it comes down to bad information or bad programming. If you were programmed with the truth, you'd make a proper decision. That's what's scaring the heck out of everybody with artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence is not going to be. See, we're halfway between the hominid state and complete consciousness. We're at a sea change in evolution, because intelligence is now, it's moved through reptiles, it moved through hominids, it's moving through humans, and it's going into the cyber now. So consciousness is going to have a much more direct access to reality, and it's not going to be subjected to the hormonal permeations that that humans are, that cause us to act sentimentally or to be incorrect. They're going to be programmed. They're going to know the truth. They're going to make the decision, and that's going to be it. Unless we build in some sort of sentimental.
Well, we certainly,
aspect.
I mean, part of the process of evolving, I would think, would be making progress and sort of moving up the hierarchy of Maslow's hierarchy of coming from food, clothing, shelter. We're now elevated into a new realm where food, clothing, shelter may not be our primary concern to some of us, and yet they are part of the intellectual evolution. Do you think that that brings about, as we move into this stage going forward, does that make us part of a collective pool of intelligence that helps us act as a collective rather than as a solo individual or as an entity by itself? I mean, are we more part of a collective body of intelligence that evolves, together?
That's what it seems. But everything that I've studied, everything that I've looked at, all the paths I've gone down, seem to indicate the lowest common denominator being that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. This physical world is here for us to experience through our senses and create. To what end, I don't know. That's beyond my pay grade. But while we're here, it happens by possibility plus choice equals reality. Every second is becoming the next. The now is becoming the now as it's chosen to be. So that's where our involvement is at this point. As far as intelligence moving up through us, a lot of people are afraid of artificial intelligence, just like I equate it to, I live in a very nice area down on Long Island, and many of the people that move into this area, once they move into the area, they don't want anybody else to move into the area. They want them to be the last house that's built and the views not be disturbed. And they don't want anybody else to come. And it seems like we as humans have through our own self-awareness, have gotten ourselves to that egocentric point where we're afraid of anything smarter than us. We don't want to see the intelligence move through us because we're we're at the top of the chain.
So
right now.
how do we as human beings overcome this this blanket of restraint? And I think that's the best word for it. We're sort of held down by these societal and these constructs that we have built around us. How do we escape that? I mean, and I think that's kind of what is at the root of what you're getting at, is sort of looking at the world through a different set of eyes, which allows you to make different decisions. And when you talk about decisions, you've made decisions in your life that you probably are not happy about, and you've probably made decisions you are happy about. Do those, having control of that second and the way you look at world now, does that make you approach the decision-making process differently?
Well, first of all, at this point in my life, there are not moments that I'm happier about or regretful of. Every moment was a moment. Every choice I made, every decision that I made was made because I at that time thought it was the right thing to do.
So do you think you have achieved a sense of nirvana or a sense of inner calm?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The peace and inner calm that comes from this understanding, first of all, that I'm going to die, and secondly, that it's happening at 18.5 miles a second, and between now and then, I can choose to be anything I want based upon the circumstances and conditions, if it's possible. If it's not possible, it can't be chosen to be. But if it's not possible in one moment, doesn't mean you can't create the circumstances for it to become possible in a subsequent moment.
So essentially,
if you understand the nature of things.
Essentially, you're saying anything is possible for anybody if they want it.
If it's possible.
If it's possible. Now, that's a big if. The if it's possible is what? The constraints of your own personal life or the limitations of your...
And the circumstances that you're in. If the river is moving and it's a mile wide and there's no bridge to get across it, you're kind of stuck on one side of the river. But if there are a pile of rocks that you can take and you can stack them up and you can then walk across them, well, then you can get across the river. It depends upon the circumstances and conditions, your awareness, what's available, and all we can do is the best we can do. The other thing is, a lot of people get me wrong. They think that, well, he thinks he knows everything. No, I don't know everything. I know how everything works. So I can use that to pretty much let it show me whatever it is I want to learn or need to know, because I know that the only restrictions are between my mind and the knowledge necessary in order for me to accomplish what it is I want to accomplish. So.
Right. I mean, that sounds pretty good on paper, but I have to say, I don't know. I mean, you're talking about the concept of free will. How do we get around free will? How do we make decisions that are going to, we do have control in some ways. I mean, we have control over world hunger, you would say, as a species. We have control over war, and yet we don't have those at our disposal. And any person who's involved in any of those situations would say the logical place to approach this would be to resolve those problems. Would be let's stop war. That's a good thing. Why can't we end world hunger?
The problem is you're getting in the middle of it there. What I'm trying to do is get to the bottom of the problem. Mm-hmm. The bottom of the problem comes to people not understanding the environment and the circumstances that we're really in.
Well, like everybody knows that
we have the choice, that each moment's becoming the next. A lot of people are of the belief that you can just wish and hope or some other way petition a being to deliver something to you. The being that has set this up basically said, here you go, each moment's becoming the next. I'm giving you have a brain that's evolved, now choose it, as you sow shall you reap. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if you get into the scriptures about it, the Gospels of Thomas is one good place, because they're the Gnostic Bibles, they're the Gospels, they're the ones that were found in the desert, last century, not having anything to do with the church. And if you read the writings of Thomas following Jesus directly, really it's what you hear in the regular Bible. It's about the woman carrying the vessel with the mustard seeds, and the vessel had a crack in it, and she got home and all the mustard seeds fell out. Well, so be it. That's the kingdom of heaven. If your vessel is cracked, your mustard seeds are going to fall out. Pay attention to your vessel. And if your mustard seeds fall out, if they fall on rocks, they're not going to grow. If they fall on fallow soil, they're not going to grow. But if they fall on fertile soil and they get the right amount of moisture, they're going to grow. So make sure you plant your mustard seeds where they're going to grow.
So it's about decision making. It's about making choices. It's about and understanding the impact of what you do now is going to have a result later. Interestingly enough, I've been looking at this thing at the end of the table for quite some time, and I'm curious as to what it is. If you could explain that.
Bring this over, yeah.
While we're at it, because I really want to get it looks like an atom to me of sorts, mm-hmm. and I'm wondering what it is.
It's a scale model of 5 minutes.
This is 5 minutes.
That's 5 minutes. If you were to take 300 seconds, 18.5 miles long, and shrink them by...
Each ping pong ball is 18.5?
Well, each ping pong ball represents a second. A second is 18.5 miles. Each one of these ping pong balls is 40 millimeters. So each one of these ping pong balls represents a second at 1/744,000th scale. We all had models when we were kids, HO trains, smaller versions of a bigger one. This is a small version of a second. A second is 18.5 miles long. But if we were to take 300 of them and put them all together, that's 5 minutes. And so here you go.
That's
okay?
5 minutes.
So that's how big 5 minutes is, times 744,000. And the reason for it is to give people a concept of visual of time, visual of time being a construct based upon space and distance.
Well, we have visuals for time because we have clocks.
No, that's not a visual for time.
Well, that's how we.
That's confusing. That's not showing you what's really happening. That's keeping you on the mark. That's all that's doing.
That's keeping you synchronized.
It's keeping you synchronized, but with what?
Well, to the rest of the world. I mean,
the rest of the world that looks at watches. Well, the Hopi Indians don't even have a word for time because they know it doesn't exist.
Okay, but in order for us to move through, and you're going to meet somebody for lunch. You say, "I'll meet you at 1 o'clock for lunch."
Absolutely.
You have to have a common denominator. Mm-hmm. That becomes time. Mm-hmm. April 15th, you got to get your taxes in, like you said earlier. We have to have those sort of parameters in order to get us to those spots, mm-hmm. and yet that's not what you're talking about.
Well, the clocks we're looking at are completely artificial. When time started and it was moon phases, it was based on natural cycles. When they went to years, it was based upon a natural cycle. Mm-hmm. When we go to these clocks that you sit in a schoolroom and you look at going around in that direction, that's just a device to keep you on beat. So,
Well,
that,
it's the
so
devi-
you
it's the
get to
device.
class on time and you get home from school on time.
It provides order. It provides order for a mass group of people in order to get things done.
It provides order, but it also provides a separation from the true natural cycles
Okay.
of of how things really work.
So
Our
if we were-
circadian switches.
Our circadian switches, right. So if we were to live outside of the traditional timekeeping methods, and we just got up in the morning when we felt like getting up, and we went to bed when we felt like getting up, and we ate when we felt like getting up.
Wouldn't that be great?
instead of eating when you're supposed to eat because it's noon and I got to eat, if you ate just when you're hungry and you did everything according to whatever it felt right at the time, there would be sort of chaos because people would not be able to have that common ground.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm not advocating the throwing time away. What I'm advocating is a better understanding of the tool. Because most people, they work for time. They're always chasing time. They can't keep up with it. Time is a tool. Time works for us, but the way it's presented to us and the way we don't understand that.
So how would you change that? If you say that we work for time and time works for us, how does that manifest?
Well, that's what I'm doing with my body of work, my books, my poetry, my clocks, my demonstration. That's what I do every day. I set every day as, okay, what's possible for me today? What is it that I want to create? And let me set about doing it. And I'm just changing the now from what it is to what it's becoming.
Well, I mean,
and I use those seconds to do it.
So you wake up in the morning with a to-do list, right? Say, perhaps?
Basic, yeah.
I mean, you
rough
got things,
idea of what
you
I
have things
have to do.
you got to walk
Sure.
the dog. You got to.
Sure. It's like the river on the canoe. I'm looking ahead. What's coming up?
Right. Okay.
It's the big picture and the picture in a picture. You have to focus on what's happening in the moment so that you're paying attention, but at the same token, you can't be transfixed by the now and rise up and have a bigger picture of the whole goal and see if the choices you're making are consistent with that goal.
So do you think that your view of time allows you to feel more comfortable as a human being and sort of your journey through life and the decisions you make and your longevity? Do you feel comfortable with that as a result of understanding time this way?
Well, I don't know that it affects my longevity.
Well, no, your perception of longevity. I mean, your acceptance of longevity.
Yeah, well, my acceptance of reality being what it is, everything going from beginning to end, including myself. To think anything other than that is completely arrogant. But most humans are. So, we think.
Well, we try to buy time. We try to buy time.
We do all sorts of things to try to, shortcuts it. When you understand every second's 18.5 miles long and each second's becoming the next as it has to, logically and mathematically and electromagnetically, you see the potential for everything. And fear goes away. There's no more monsters under the bed. There's nobody out to get me but me. And I let the results of my actions teach me how to do something better. Or what to avoid.
Well, I mean, that would be the case for any of us. We all would learn by trial and error. We'd all would learn by our mistakes. That's the presumption, and not everybody seems to do that. Sometimes we beat our head against the wall, but that's Einstein's definition of, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting to get a different reaction.
And people do that.
Yeah.
And people do that every day. And I'm not
And it's
myself. I'm not
pushing the
totally
rock
different.
up the hill, right? Yeah. It's
Right.
very
Just because
interesting.
I understand how it works doesn't mean I win I get every decision right. Just because you know how the rules of Monopoly.
Well, you get stuck in traffic
doesn't mean
jams.
you're going to win every game.
You get stuck in traffic jams,
Right.
you get frustrated by that, so you know what that's all about. Interesting stuff. I think this is a very interesting topic that could go on for hours, or it could go on for many, many miles, I should say.
Absolutely.
My guest today has been Michael Galileo. Thank you so much for coming on.
Chris,
What's your website again?
GalileoRealtime.com.
GalileoRealtime.com is his website. He has his interesting clocks there, which will definitely throw people off when they see it going backwards. I've got one in my barn, and I appreciate that very much. And it's been great having this conversation about time. I think it's a topic that we've probably just scratched the surface of, and if we had more seconds in our time, we could probably get a lot more accomplished. But we have to operate within the seconds that we have, and we only traveled so far today, and that's that. Thank you so much.